So the Supreme Court unanimously decided to place limits on civil asset forfeiture. That's awesome. Let me give you the specifics, then we'll talk about it. On Wednesday, the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that constitutional protections against excessive fines extend to states through the 14th Amendment, placing limits on the ability of state and local police to seize and keep cars, cash, houses, and other assets used in the commission of crimes, even from people not accused of crimes. The practice, known as civil asset forfeiture, is a common and lucrative source of revenue for states and local governments, and it is frequently abused. The unanimous decision in the case Timms v. Indiana won't end the practice, but will allow people whose property was seized to argue in court that the amount taken was disproportionate to the crime. The historical and logical case for concluding that the 14th Amendment incorporates the excessive fines clause is overwhelming. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote for the 8-justice majority. Justice Clarence Thomas wrote his own opinion. For good reason, the protection against excessive fines has been a constant shield throughout Anglo-American history. Exorbitant tolls undermine other constitutional liberties and can be used, for example, to retaliate against or chill the speech of political enemies. In the case at hand, Indiana ordered small-time drug offender Tyson Timms to pay $1,200 in fines and fees after pleading guilty to selling $225 of heroin, but they also seized his $42,000 Land Rover, arguing that even though he bought it with money from his father's life insurance policy, he used it to commit crimes. People are still going to lose their property without being convicted of a crime. They're still going to have their property seized. Wesley Hoddett, a lawyer for Timms, told the New York Times. The new thing is that they cannot now say at the end of it all, whether I'm guilty or not, I can argue that it was excessive. All right, so this is good, but I have to be honest, in my opinion, this doesn't go nearly far enough. Civil asset forfeiture in and of itself is unconstitutional, in my opinion. The government flips the burden of proof, and they just say, oh, we're going to just claim that you're using this property, this money, whatever it may be, in the process of committing a crime, so we're just going to take it. But there is no... They could just do it, and then they flip the burden of proof. Now you're guilty until proven innocent, and then oftentimes there's not even a process whereby which you get it back. So now it seems like they're saying you have to set up a process, and you have to allow people to contest it and say, you seizing this is disproportionate to the level of crime I was committing. But even that seems like a weird boondoggle quagmire of a middle ground, which makes no sense. Really what you should say is, no, you're not allowed to just steal property. I mean, obviously, something that is actually... the crime, full stop, you can seize. So if there's an illegal gun that was used in committing a crime, of course you could seize the illegal gun that was used in committing a crime. Of course you could seize the illegal drugs that are part of a crime, assuming drugs should still be illegal, which I don't think they should be, but that's a different conversation. But to say like, oh, you sold a couple $100 worth of drugs, now I'm going to take your Land Rover because you used the car to drive to do the drug deal, that's fucking lunacy, man. That is against Enlightenment principles, against the Constitution, against freedom. I mean, that's insanity, if you ask me. So at least they're trying to reel in the civil asset forfeiture a little bit. But to me, this is still a terrible middle ground that doesn't nearly get as far as it needs to. But we started the ball moving in the right direction. And what I like is how it was 9-0. So what that tells you is there's a conservative argument and a left-wing argument against civil asset forfeiture. I mean, the left-wing argument almost makes itself, you are taking advantage of people based on nothing. And it's legalized robbery by cop. That's the left-wing argument against it. And I think that's true. But the right-wing argument against it is a process argument, and it's also an argument against big government. That should we give the government the authority to do something like this and flip the burden of proof and then get away with it? And so even the right-wingers on the court were like, yeah, that's government that's too big, that's government that's skirting a process, and so now they're trying to reintroduce process, allow people to contest it. Still not strong enough, but at least we're starting in the right direction here. Civil asset forfeiture is a scam in and of itself. And until we get to the point where it's totally eliminated... these are just half measures, but still, a half measure is better than no measure, so at least it's a little something to celebrate.